I think how your life changes when you start running a business, not in terms of like necessarily how your day-to-day changes, but more how your environment around you changes, and how inevitably like relationships change and your habits change. Even though it seems like you're just changing one quadrant of your life, you're actually changing everything because it has like knock-on effects.
Hi, I'm Lucy.
And I'm Yasmin.
And we started an online community called Ecomm Girls Club because we had no friends.
Well, no, we had friends, just not friends working in e-commerce, D2C marketing and brand building like us.
And now we do. Ecomm Girls Club is the first international community exclusively for girls in e-commerce, and we have a lot to say about it.
So we started a podcast. We'll be here each week to talk about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, building online business and the problems we face in the e-com industry.
And we'll also be sharing the stories of the amazing women within our community who are all crushing it. So let's get into it.
Talking about change, right, and how your life changes, but what do you wish you knew when you were starting your first business? Because you were super young and you must have learned so much, but if you could tell your like 21-year-old self, expect this, what would you say?
You're gonna have to be in one place for longer than you think. This was my experience, and to be honest with you, I actually do think that it's gonna end up going that way again for me. It might be different for everyone, but I found like when I grew my agency, because we had offices and we had staff and all of our clients were basically in one country other than one, which we had in the Middle East, which we ended up losing over COVID anyway, because COVID, it forced me to be in the UK. And the thing is, like, I didn't go into starting my own agency to have freedom of movement or freedom of travel. That's just something that actually came after I left my agency, closed that business. And then I've started a cloth project, and we've got Ecomm Girls Club. But even with cloth project, like, I can see, even at this stage, this very early stage, the brand's 10 months old, like, there is an argument for me to be in the UK running that business. That's because I've got a UK business partner, and like stock's in the UK, and like, just, I don't know, many other reasons that I believe it is beneficial to be in one place. Now, the other kind of side to that is like the emotional impact that moving around so much actually has on me personally. Like, I really, really struggle with that. And Luce, you and I have had so many conversations about this over the last year.
It's interesting because I was going to say, Yasmin and I are very similar in a lot of ways, e.g. type A psychos, but in like other ways we're quite different. Like, and travel's one of them, like, or like working whilst traveling is one of them. What I'm probably, you're going to say the opposite of what I would say, which is so interesting. So I'll let you continue.
Right. No, so I think, like, to that point, it really comes down to who you are. So for me, I don't know, I guess I always thought that what was really important to me was to be able to like travel, work from where I want to work. And that sounds amazing, and it is amazing. But for me personally, I really struggle without that kind of consistency, that routine, that base that I can call my own home. I really struggle without that. For me, like, that's one of my core fundamentals that enables me to like springboard off of that and be my most productive self. So actually, like, since losing, it's really strange. It's almost like you just want what you can't have. Because when I had elementary, 100%, like, at the end, I remember saying, like, I just felt so shackled to that office in Chiswick. I was like, I just want to go. Like, yeah, we didn't have annual leave because we owned the company, but we kind of did, because we couldn't just leave because we had staff, and you know what I mean? So it's, it really is, you want what you can't have. And then I got all the freedom in the world, and now all I crave is that base again. Is that one permanent fixture. So I'm like, I'm fucking impossible.
But it's
You're the
so
opposite,
interesting. I am the opposite. Like, I get cabin fever, as Yasmin can attest to. Like, I like to move around, but I think people see like social media and think I'm holidaying. No, I'm working like really hard. But for me, moving my location sometimes actually makes me more productive. However, I will caveat that I have a home in Hong Kong, a very, very small flat, but I'm so attached to it, and I love having a home to come back to. And I think that psychologically is super important for as long as I go away for like 8 weeks sometimes. But I always have a home to come back to, which for me is, it makes a massive difference to like my mental health as well, I think. However, I will also say that me actually being stuck in one place, it's literally the opposite to you. Me being stuck in one place is what made me start my business, because I was trapped in COVID in Hong Kong. It was great in many ways, but I'm sure people remember, like, out here, COVID policies were another level of extreme. So we were literally trapped for almost 3 years, really. And I think because I was stuck in one place and I couldn't move around all the time, which is what I did before I moved to Hong Kong. I moved countries, I think, 3 or 4 times in 2 years. But COVID stopped me doing that and made me really think about what I wanted. So in a way, being stuck here is what got me the freedom, if that makes sense. Like, it pushed me to make that change. So yeah, it's interesting how things work.
It is, and I think it all comes down to like who you are. Like, my boyfriend, for example, is the complete opposite of me in terms of wanting that freedom of movement. Like, he started his entire business 10 years ago with the goal of having freedom. Like, that was his why. And so for some people, like him or like you, Luce, like that ability to move around is really important. Like, however, there's a difference. Like, for you, you just said having a base is still super
massively
crucial, because that's your anchor. And like, at the moment, like, I've just left Dubai, I don't have an anchor. Like, I'm at my mum's in Spain at the moment, and then we're traveling Europe for the summer, which again, on paper sounds absolutely incredible, like amazing. But the first thing I'm thinking about is, how on earth am I going to maintain any kind of consistency and routine to stay productive with my work? Like, it really is, I don't know. It's like, it's like, oh my God, first world problems. But seriously, if you can't be productive because you're not able to find that routine, that really is a problem when it affects your work. So yeah, I'd say really think about what you want when you're starting a business. Like, if it's freedom of travel or freedom of movement, amazing. Like, a lot of people have that desire naturally. But firstly, the grass isn't always greener. And secondly, I'd say, just like, and this is something I need to put in place, so I've not got it, but make sure you've always got your home to go back to. Make sure you've always got your base. I do think that's important, particularly for women.
Yeah, I would agree. I think so. It's that's good advice, though. You'll have to be somewhere longer than you think, because I think people forget, even the people who do have freedom of location, you have to often do quite a lot of stationary work to get to that point. Like I did, I had 2 jobs for a long time because I had my business and a corporate career. So I think but I mean, an important lesson, but that's good advice, Yasmin. So wise.
Thanks. Well, what about you? What would your piece of advice be?
You'd have thought that through that ramble I would have had time to think of mine.
This is not scripted.
No. I think one of the things is that how do I say it? Like, you're not even like that your relationships change, but it will surprise you which relationships change and who really comes alongside you if you're doing something super different. And I think this is just part of, and it doesn't have to be about building a business, right? This is just part of growing up, but relationships and values, I feel like your core values and things really settle. And when you do something like start running your own business and your life like goes upside down, it makes people uncomfortable around you sometimes, all the change and your relationships changing, and that has knock-on effects. I think I didn't really think about that when I was setting up my business, on how it would impact my wider life. I was just like, oh, this is great, I'll be able to run around the world and it won't have an impact. But of course, if I'm not here all the time, it affects my relationships that I had. You know, like, I don't think I'm describing this very well, but I think you get it.
I get it from a like working remotely perspective. So like, for example, I've just done 7 months in Dubai and I've now left for 4 months, and like, all the friends I've made, they're still there and they're still going out and they're still like strengthening those friendships and strengthening those bonds and spending that time together, and I'm obviously not there. And so like, but that's a choice of mine to not be there, because I, you know, lucky enough that because I'm in e-commerce and I work remotely online, like I can take my laptop and work from wherever. But again, there's a cost to that because those friendships are not being nurtured. And like, the reality is the friendships will still be fine when I go back in October, but there is a cost to not being there physically. And And it's like all these things that you just don't think about until, I mean, to be honest, I don't think about these things until they've happened. Like I'm very much a bit of like a gung ho, let's just do it and deal with the consequences later. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a real life impact. Like friendships are an interesting one. I don't know. I've been lucky enough to not have like much drama or like lack of support from friends when I've been growing businesses. Like they've always just kind of really been supportive. And I don't know, have you had any other kind of experience that you can talk to that wasn't so positive, I guess?
Well, I mean, I was going to say on the positive front, like, I think, and Hong Kong is great for this as well, to be fair. Like, it's a very special place in terms of community, and the amount of people that rally behind you and cheer you on is amazing. I posted a reel on, it was on Ecomm Girls Club Instagram, I think last week, and the amount of like love just from people who I know from where I work, the co-working space I work from, who like posted something nice and were like, you go for it, and cheer you on. It makes a massive difference because you get so in your head sometimes about putting yourself out there, and you know what, we've spoken about this before, you're so hard on yourself often when it's your own business. Like at least once a day I think I'm the massive failure of the world, which is so dramatic but on brand for me. But to be honest,
well, I
but
think on that point as well, like you can be the most confident and secure person in the world, but when you are building something, and just to kind of sidestep there, most people are not the most confident and secure people in the world. Like we know this, we talk about this all the time. Like we're not, we're just not. Regardless of like successes or track record or whatever, like you never really get to a point where you're like your confidence levels are through the roof. I don't think that ever happens. In fact, if anything, I think insecurity grows bigger and stronger because you're more aware of the opportunities that you could still go after but haven't yet achieved. So it's like this constant hedonistic treadmill. Anyway, I was what's the word? Digressing.
No,
but my
I agree. I think I feel I've been overwhelmingly like lucky with the positive support. I think I have had relationships change, but that is again because now I'm away for long periods of time, so people I saw like every other day, that just doesn't happen anymore. And I think, I don't know how much of it though, it's kind of hard because the only big change in my life has been that I've gone from working a fairly standard hours corporate job to running two businesses with you and then by myself. So I don't know how much of where I have seen changes is because of that, or if it's because we're just getting older and, you know, like I said earlier, values and you grow apart and like priorities change. But I also think it might be partly the time of our life because we're both late 20s, and it's that point where some of our friends are like having kids, some of our friends are getting married, some of our friends are still going out till like 5 a.m. Like everyone's doing such different things at this stage in our life that I think it's probably a time when lots of friendships change.
100%. You know what's really strange is like I have had my most of my like adult life, and this is no like shade on my mates or the people who have said this to me, but I hear a lot people saying, my brother even said it the other day, like, I didn't think you would want kids. Like, I didn't think you'd be the type of person to want kids. Like people say it to me all the time. And I'm kind of like, why? Like, what is it that I'm giving off that suggests that? And the feedback is always that because I'm like so focused on my work, and it's always been like my identity and what I kind of lean on. I've always wanted kids, but I've always said, like, I don't think that's going to be for me until I'm kind of like 32, 33, like whatever. And I'm 29
is still
now,
young.
so that's,
it's
still young. It's still very young, but and I'm only 29 now, just turned 29. So that's like another
but older
3
than
or 4
me,
years.
just saying.
Yeah. By like 2 months.
Not even that, like a month.
Down.
Yeah, literally 6 weeks.
Yeah. But a weird thing has happened in the last few months where I'm like really, really broody, and I'm kind of thinking, no, stop, no, like, no, this cannot be happening. No, it doesn't mean I'm going to go and have a baby, but there's definitely been like a bit of a mental shift, and if anything, it's just put more pressure on what I want to achieve, because I'm like, for so long, you know, when you don't want something imminently, you don't even think about it. You just crack on with what you're focusing on, which is my work and my businesses. But when something else comes into your psyche, it's like another thing to contend with. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to share that because I've been feeling kind of weird about it. And I don't know if it's just like a phase, or if women in their late 20s, like if everybody kind of goes through the change where it's like, oh God,
You
actually I
suddenly
can
want,
see
yeah.
it.
But I mean, it is linked as well, though, the part about, you know, hitting your like business goals and having a family, or I think it is anyway, because I mean, my example is I'm very far away from thinking about those kind of things, but at the same time, I'm acutely aware that to be able to afford to have children, I need to work really hard now,
Yeah.
especially if I live somewhere like Hong Kong where it's really, really expensive. So it does, even if you're not thinking of children, I think in the back of your mind, and this might even, I can't speak for men, but I feel like probably guys do, it comes across their mind as well, because you've got to be able to afford to have children. It's not cheap.
Yeah, you do. And I actually feel like I would potentially feel different about, I mean, I definitely would feel different about wanting them and when, if that position was different or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's just something that's kind of changed in my mind recently. And I think it adds more pressure to that timeline, that mental timeline that I have, in my own head of like how long I have left to achieve the things I want to
I
achieve.
have left.
I feel like I
So
spoke about this on
morbid.
the last one. Yeah, I know. So I'm in my
So
head, I'm like, my
morbid,
whole life is
Jasmine.
going to change when I have children. Do you not think that though? Like, I've got quite a few friends now who have had
I'm just
kids, and
very naive.
they are granted slightly older. Yeah, but this is the thing. If I didn't have those women in my life, and I didn't have first-hand experience of their
Yeah.
experience with kids, I would have no idea, and I'd be equally naive. But I've seen it, and it's fucking hard. So, like, how on earth do you do that and still maintain growing a business? Like, for me, I don't, unless you've got loads of money and you can have all the nannies in the world, amazing, good for you. But if you don't, seriously, what do you do? Because it scares me, and that's why I'm kind of bringing it up now, because
But it's
it's
also,
it's a real life
it's kind
thing.
of like another baby though, because your business, whether you, I remember one of my mentors saying
Exactly.
to me, like, I was talking to her, she's amazing, and I was talking to her, and she actually did do this. She had an agency, and she set up the agency when I think her first child was like 8 weeks old, and then she had another one within 18 months, another baby, and still ran an
Wow.
agency, which I'm like, how do you do that? Because I can barely run my agency with Son's children. Um, but
Son, did
by
you
the
just
way,
say
my
son's
agency's
children?
Son's children, yeah. My agency's great if any clients are listening. Just
Son's
by the way.
infants.
Just like shooting myself in the foot there. But I remember her saying to me, and it kind of plays back to that point I was saying about relationships. She was like, your friends might not understand that your business is your baby. Like, you can't expect everyone to care about it the way you do, which is also a very
Yeah.
valid point, which I think we forget probably. But it is like having
Do do
a
you
child.
think do you think it's different? You know, this kind of my business is my baby analogy that has been
Yeah.
around for years. Like, everybody says that.
Yes.
Do you think second time founders feel that same bond and
Ooh.
connection and, yeah, like lifeline?
Let's ask. Oh, I wonder who we can ask who's a second-time founder. Yasmin Sheikh.
Well, I
Like,
wanted to
just
ask
gonna throw
you
that one
because
back at you.
I'm genuine. The
I
reason I
mean, I
put
am
the
too
question
technical,
out
but
there is because I know how I feel, and but I didn't know if I guess I'm curious as to, like, do other people feel like that too? Because for me, when I had elementary, it was every single thing to me. It was my baby. It was my identity, my confidence, my everything, like my lifeline. And I felt really wedded to it as well as beholden. So it was everything that you would categorize as a baby in a business. But now, kind of doing business again, I don't have that same emotional connection. Now, that doesn't mean to say I don't have the same passion and enthusiasm and vigor and motivation to make these things successes.
well,
But I
you
guess
clearly
what I'm
do.
saying
I
is,
hear you talk about Cloth Project all the time. I
yeah,
know you
but I
do.
don't, I guess I don't feel the same. Um, God, how do I articulate this? I have a bit more perspective this time round. Like, not to me, I don't know. I can kind of assess the situation now and not feel so emotionally involved. when it comes to
But
business. And before I could never do that. And I don't
I
know, I
mean,
guess like,
there's a couple of, looking on it from the outside, from what I know about you, there's a couple of variables, right? So one, like, you're more mature, which I think you just have better perspective as you get older most of the time. Because
sometimes.
Sometimes like, I can also, do you really want me to go through the list of like the times when that has not been the case? No.
No.
But like, I also think with your first agency, you were obviously running it with a co-founder who you were also in a relationship with, which is a whole other dynamic,
wild.
like, which is massive. And then, you know, when you're 21, of course it's your, you know, if ever, all your friends were probably at uni or on grad scheme, so it was natural that it was your like whole baby, you know, you weren't like a fully formed grown up yet.
Yeah, and I think I also felt like I had more to prove because I hadn't proven
I get
anything
that.
yet, you know? So I think that has personally for me, like that kind of validation and respect is
Yeah.
still to this day very important to me, but probably a lot more important to me then.
It's
I don't
interesting
know.
because I probably have the opposite, but that's because anything I did before the
Yeah.
Leaf Group was purely for fun. Like, I used to just set up little businesses for fun because I found it fun trying different
Yeah.
things, but it never had
Yeah.
to pay for my life. I never had a visa attached to it to be
Yeah.
resident somewhere. And also when I left financial services to set up the Leaf Group, like, I felt like I had a point to prove because there were a lot of people who said I couldn't do it. Oh yeah, so I have the opposite because I felt like I had a point to prove a bit with the Leaf Group because people thought I couldn't do it, or thought it was implied by a lot of people that they assumed I'd be living in like abject poverty if I started my own agency and that I hadn't thought this through or
Yeah.
like done any maths, you know, like, of course I had.
Yeah, but you know what, Luce? Like
Yeah.
what I found, it's like if you want the wrong advice, ask too many people or something like that. Or
Yeah.
like if you want the wrong advice, ask other people.
Ooh,
What is
I've
that
got
phrase?
one. I know what you're thinking of. Might be a slightly different one. Don't take advice. Oh no, that's a different thing. I was going to say, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. That is also good,
That's
but it's a different one.
100% true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I think you can apply this to work and like personal life, but yeah, I find that especially when it comes to anything career based, people are so afraid of the unknown, and that's why a lot of people never start their own thing or do their own thing because they're scared, and that's fair enough. But if you go to those same people and ask for advice on how to start a business or whether to start a business, they're only going to project their own insecurities and fears onto you, and that's something that like I actually have experienced a lot of in life. In fact, I remember my first, I was just starting elementary. I was like 2 weeks into it, and I was renting a flat from this kind of elderly lady, I guess, in Fulham. And she'd had like pubs or something in the past, can't quite remember. And I was talking to her about it, almost like, I don't know, I guess I was going to her for a bit of advice, for encouragement, and a bit of like, you can do this, like, it's a good idea, sort of thing. And I just remember her basically saying how hard it's going to be, and am I really sure about this, and like, have I really thought about it? And although these comments come from probably a place of concern, I actually took it as it just felt quite negative, but it was kind of like the fire that I needed. Like, I needed someone to say, not sure you can do it, for me to feel like, pretty sure I can, watch me. And like, I don't know, it can kind of go one or two ways.
The type A psycho thing coming in again.
Yeah,
I'm the same.
yeah,
Like, if someone tells me I can't do it,
me.
I'll do it and like take a picture and smile. You know, like, I'm so
Yeah,
childish like that.
literally.
But it's a great thing. You know, I mean, I kind of had it, and he won't mind me saying this. Even because my dad's an entrepreneur, and very successful, and like, I definitely was inspired by him growing up because I saw someone building a business, you know. But I remember when I was talking about leaving the bank and leaving financial services, I assumed he'd be like, yes, do it, go for it. But he wasn't. He was more like, oh, are you sure? Like, you've got a really good job, like, you're doing so well, like, you're on this great career path, like, would you want to give all that up or leave or like take the risk? And now he's super supportive in terms of my business goals and things like that, and helps me with bits of it, and loves to give feedback and things like that. But I don't think it ever came from a place of he didn't want me to do it. I think it's he knew how hard it was, and he hasn't, I don't know, I haven't asked him, but I think he doesn't always feel like, similar to us, he feels like he hasn't been successful when he most definitely has. And he just didn't want me to like almost go through that, because, and by the way, being in a corporate doesn't necessarily mean it's less risky, because there's so many like redundancies and takeovers and restructures that actually I would say it's just as risky in many ways. But I can understand why he thought that.
No, I can as well. It's actually, it's a phenomenon called the Danny-Kruger effect. And essentially, I might butcher this slightly, so I'm going to try and get it right. Yeah, it's essentially like the more experience you have, the more fearful you become, because you're more aware of the risks that are entailed. Yeah. Or you're more aware of the opportunities and kind of like the amount of work that can still be done that you've not done. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, actually. I think I was probably pulling on that from somewhere back here. But yeah, it's called the Danny-Kruger effect. And I think there's so much truth in that, because also as part of this Danny-Kruger thing, when you first start a business, your traction and momentum is so fast because the barrier to entry is so much lower. So the amount of knowledge and information that you can uptake in a short period of time is vast. So you have this kind of perpetuation, this like you're propelled forward, right? But over time that slows, because you know you gain more and more and more experience and understanding, that your growth actually slows over time. So yeah, it's really interesting. I think I've got that right. I'm not sure, but yeah, Google Danny-Kruger effect. It's basically what you were just saying. And this is why a lot of older people who have been in industry for a while are quite critical and skeptical, which makes sense, right? Like they know more than we know.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. But then at the same time, I was just thinking about Ecomm Girls Club, and one of my favourite things is we've been so fortunate to have lots of new members, which is great, and quite a few of them are what I would like are new to setting up their businesses, or they've had an idea and they've gone full steam ahead. And like it's so infectious being around people who have been running their businesses like less than a year, who are in that phase, because it just spurs you on. Like Yasmin and I are old and weary, but when you're no offense, but when you're like
not
no, I know. I don't mean visually. I mean in terms of like, because we're at that point probably where things get harder, right? But being around people who are so energetic and enthusiastic about their products and their businesses is just the best, because it spurs you on. Like it gives you a boost of energy.
Yeah, I mean, you need it. Like the brain can't tell the difference between reality and daydreaming, for example, right? So like if you're telling your brain, this is like what manifestation is essentially, or if you're surrounded by people who are positively moving forward, we might be, or they might be very naive, they might not know all of the potential risks and downfalls, kind of doesn't matter, because the brain can't tell the difference. All the brain picks up on is the positive momentum. And honestly, sometimes it's not necessarily the most intelligent people that succeed. It's the people who just have that belief and that kind of hope. They're the ones that can often get quite far in life, because they can see that vision, and it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's very true as well. I can think of countless examples of all the people I know who I consider, and I mean success is such you can't define it, right? There's just so many metrics and variables, and success is different to everyone. But people I personally think are super successul, they've all just like gone for it and had a crack.
But do you know what I mean?
And then just like not given up.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, because do you ever get that thing where you see really successful people and you're like, sorry, but how did they do that? Like, what is it that they've got that I've not got, kind of thing? And most of the time, the difference is belief. A lot, like it can make such a huge difference. And there are like lots of anecdotes that I could go into, like that support that. But yeah, belief is so important. I mean, it's so much easier said than done though, right? Because what do you do when you have a down day and things are really tough, or like actually the numbers aren't reflecting that goddamn belief? What do you do, you know?
It is, but that's where like that's why we do this, right? At the same time, the power of community and having people around you that get it and like cheerlead you on. Like I love cheerleading for my friends. I know it probably sounds like so like, oh, of course you'd say that, but it's true. I love it when they're doing cool stuff. I'll like share anything on my Instagram, even if it's irrelevant to like what I'm doing, you know, because it is like, you know what when you've done it yourself, you know what it feels like when you're having a crap day. And sometimes I think I did a post about this on LinkedIn actually maybe yesterday, about just being kind. And if you think something nice, sorry, this is a slightly different point. If you think something nice about someone, say it. Like DM them, or like if you see them, say it, because they might be having the worst day. There's been so many occasions where I've been having a very, very, very bad day and thinking the world is over, normally to do with one of her businesses, and someone said something like, we received a really lovely compliment about the podcast this morning and it genuinely made my day. It's just say it, because it costs you nothing, but it could change someone's day. And you see my point.
No, I fully agree with that. I think it's so important to also I think it does something to the brain when you say positive stuff, whether it's about yourself or not. I think it really like feeds your brain in a different, like lights up your brain in a different way, right? If you're putting out positivity, it sounds very spiritual and like a bit booky, but I do believe in this kind of stuff.
Podcast. I do too.
But it's all psychology. Like business is psychology.
Yeah.
It's all psychology. And I think like there's a reason why people like, I don't know, Dr. Huberman, and I can't think of anyone else, but these kinds of accounts have grown and blown up so much that recently, is because he talks so much about the brain and about these kind of positive interactions and how important they are to our overall success.
We will link everyone we've mentioned below as well, actually, because I feel like you've dropped some great names of people to follow there as well, Yas. 100%.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I hope so. There's quite a lot of
good to like. I love like
there.
People's recommendations are always great for this kind of stuff, because it's the same as surrounding yourself, but who you follow on social media, it's the same thing. Like I try and follow people who are inspiring.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, because all this information that I've just been like bits of knowledge that I've dropped today has actually all been
come from
today
social media.
From social media.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think if it's from any books that I'm reading. It's not. It's just from really interesting, informative accounts.
100%.
Yeah.
It's not all bad. Like there are some good
things. It's not all bad. Yeah, no. Exactly.
It is good. Oh, I feel like I've had like a pep talk now. This is great.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And to get involved with Ecomm Girls Club, search for @Ecomm Girls Club on Instagram.
But if you feel like taking your Instagram stalking one step further, we are both also on Instagram @YasminChic and @LucyCG.